let's move on to the second mindset shift that I want you to make. This is about moving from a sort of employee's mindset to an owner's mindset. That's key to developing wealth. All right, so stay with me here. So when we look at something like the stock market, if you had put $1,000 into the broad stock market in the United States, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, over the course of 40 years, that $1,000 would have grown to be worth over $46,000. So that means that just by putting your money in the stock market and leaving it alone, you were able to earn $45,000 in wealth. Time is extremely powerful, and the way that you get time on your side is to become an owner of your property, an owner of financial assets, an owner of other real assets or intellectual property assets. So that is why you want to be having that owner's mindset. Let time work for you. That's what I mean by the sow and harvest mindset. Is that, there are things that you can plant now and you never know how they're going to grow in the future. And I know that I've already said this, so I'm going to move on, but just be thinking about that now. What could I be starting now? Let me give you a simple example, because my whole purpose in making this course is to be friendly with you and to be real with how I would talk to my sister about this type of stuff, or my friend Josh. A lot of times we tend to think about starting something like a book or like anything else, like a little side business. We tend to think, we need to really do a really good job at this and put a lot of time and energy into it. But I've found the opposite to be true. You can start planting seeds in very, very little ways. For example, let's say that you're an avid soap maker, right? And so you decide that all you're going to do is create a soap making meetup for people in your community. This might seem like a really, really small, meaningless step, but I would argue that you're planting the seed for a future asset right there. This is the owner's mindset. That's because this group over the course of 2 or 3 years might grow to be something meaningful. You might create a group of soap makers that have 1,000 members in it. And then in 3 years' time, you decide, you know what? I'm going to charge each of these members an annual fee for having access to the group. It's only $10 each, right? But if you have 1,000 members in your soap making group and you charge them $10 each, that's $10,000, right? So you see how two things. First of all, you planted a seed, and then over time it grew, and then you harvested it. Now, there's something else I want you to remember that we've talked about that is important there. That this was a good asset. You love making soap in this example. So this group is something that you can invest in. You made it quality because you liked it. That's why when we get into the speculator's mindset, it's not really where you want to be. You want to be looking for good assets that are meaningful, that you can attach yourself to and you can hold on to for a long time. And that doesn't have to start off as something like that's a very big project. Oftentimes it's little things that you just start making little investments and you grow them over time. That's how you become an owner. Before we wrap up this lecture, I want to let you know about the 2 ways that assets can help you generate wealth. The first way is with ordinary income. In the example that we just talked about there, your $10,000 from all the members of your soap making club in your community, that's ordinary income. It's cash money that comes into your bank, and that's a way that you generate wealth. However, there's a second and very important way that you generate wealth, and that's called capital gains. What capital gains are is when you purchase something for hopefully a low price, and then you sold it for a higher price. So the difference between that low price you bought it for and what you sold it for, that's your capital gain. Here's a simple example. Let's say that you bought an index fund. So an index fund is a very common way to diversify your investment across an entire stock market. For example, you could go put $1,000 in the Dow Jones Industrial Average Index Fund. What that does is it basically takes that $1,000 and splits it up between every company that's in the Dow Jones Industrial Average on a balanced basis. So you're getting instant diversification across the entire stock market. So you've basically diversified away all of your dumb risk, right? Okay, so let's say you purchase that index fund at $1,000. and then 10 years later you sell it for $4,000. That means that you have $3,000 of capital gains. Now, the reason that I'm sticking on this point of capital gains is that capital gains are taxed a little bit differently than ordinary income. When you invest in something like the stock market, in theory, the government sees you as taking on additional risk because it's risky to invest in companies sometimes. So typically, capital gains are taxed at a lower rate than ordinary income. Now, one thing that's important about capital gains is that the length of time that you hold it often determines whether you pay a lower or a higher rate. If you hold on to your assets for usually more than 2 or 4 years, your capital gains are taxed at a lower rate. So that gets into this whole idea of being an owner. You buy good assets, hold on to them, and then sell them when they're high, hopefully after a while. So in summary, the most powerful way to make your money work for you is to let it create value for the world over time. Time is your friend. There are basically 2 ways that your money can work for you. It can generate cash flow or capital gains. Your investments can generate cash flow with things like dividends from the ownership of stocks or bonds, or through something like rent payments from real assets like property. You're going to earn capital gains when the sale price of an asset that you purchased is more than what you paid for it. The difference is your capital gain.